Just because an urban growth boundary shifts doesn't mean the ag land isn't important anymore.
Hey, John, this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. You know, this is what is going to happen every single day. The newspaper said it cost $1 million yesterday. You are going to vote for the people of this island to spend $1 million every single working day of their lives. Every single working day of their lives, another $1 million. That's what we're dealing with. Now,
I'm summarizing now. It's finally dawned on me that creating an overdeveloped corridor out west with the idea of preserving country on the other side of the island has created this calamity of traffic congestion hell. If you approve the development of D.R. Horton's Hoopili, you will subject the western Oahu Island to permanent traffic congestion purgatory.
That land at Hoopili and Coal Ridge together produce 40% of our fresh vegetables that are locally grown. 40%. Now you take those lands away and we're going to have 40% less fresh vegetables from this island.
These things are going to be $400,000 or $500,000 minimum. Who's going to be able to afford them on a normal working salary? Situation, not Tono. It's the Hawaiian style. You're not supposed to pit the guys like me. I don't have a house. I need house too. These guys, they all working hard. They live west side. I don't like take away their jobs. You're not supposed to make us choose between whether or not we can eat or whether or not we can live in one house. We all like eat. We all gonna have to. If there was crisis, then what?
And then the soil, don't get me started on the soil. It's fabulous. They can grow a variety of crops that cannot be grown elsewhere on the island. There's either too much rain, the altitude is too high, it gets too cold at night. There's always something, but it's all there in Hoopili.
Farming land that's producing isn't supposed to be taken out of production. That is a state law. Does anybody want to check up on that?
Finally, there are just 67,000 acres of farmland left on this island. Of those, only about 5,000 are grade A and B land with access to potable water. Of those, Hoopili would steal more than 1,500 acres.
This is how precious that land is. In Waimanalo, where you're from, Chairman, Dr. James Brubaker, a famous old man at the University of Hawaii, who's now Professor Emeritus, who's going to be testifying for us, years ago did a study in Waimanalo and found that contrary to the rest of the world where you only get one crop of corn a year because you have winters, in Waimanalo they get two. But Waimanalo has a lot of rain. So he went up to this central area of Oahu and he tested corn there and how many crops you could get a year. And he could get 3 up there because it has less rain. But as you know, central Oahu has a lot of cloud cover, and what it takes for plants to grow is not water, but sunshine. And so he went down to the Ewa Plains, specifically to the area that we're talking about, Hoopili, and he raised corn there, and he found he could get 4 crops a year. Now, you can't get 4 crops a year anywhere else on this island, And that is the highest producing, that's the highest producing land that we have on the island. For us not to consider that as important agricultural lands when it, along with Coal Ridge, produce 40% of our presently, the 40% of all of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we have just simply makes no sense.
As climate change disrupts harvests across the world, we have to boost our food resiliency here. You've heard many times we only grow about 8% of what we eat here.
We also have sea level rise coming into our lives in ways that we don't recognize. This is salt water coming out of our storm drain system. You know, when we build a road, it's not flat. It has a crown to it so that rainfall will be shed off into the gutters, and then the rain will run down the gutter and out the storm drain, and our storm drains lead to the ocean. Well, with high tide and a rising sea level, salt water comes up and floods our streets. Now listen carefully to this movie outside the Waikiki Outrigger Reef Hotel. Those are waves coming up in our storm drain system. This isn't even at high tide. So as sea level sort of slowly and inexorably rises into our lives, we're going to have problems with areas when there are heavy rainfall events. We're going to have flooding that won't have any place to drain. Underneath the lands that we live on in the coastal plain, there's a freshwater aquifer. It's not drinkable, but it sits on salt water. And it goes up and down with the tides. If you put a well in right here, you can watch the water table go up at high tide and down at low tide. So this aquifer is fully communicating with the ocean. And as the ocean rises due to climate change, this aquifer is going to rise. And it's going to flood low-lying areas in our land. For instance, here's a map of western Waikiki and Kaka'ako. This shows the areas that will be flooded by 3 feet of sea level rise due to marine inundation. This shows the same area with groundwater inundation as the water table rises. When the water table breaks through the land surface, it creates a place called a wetland or a swamp. And at first, as the water table goes up and down with the tides, you'll have water filling in an area and then draining out again. This is already happening in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. They have actually engineered swales. They've created low areas and grassed them in, and these will fill as ponds at high tide, and then they'll drain out again. It's the forefront of sea level rise moving into our communities.
My name is Tom Berg, and I come from 96706, but we're all in this together, so it doesn't matter. Chair, I'd like to bring to your attention that I'm in opposition to this measure on the basis and grounds that it's a social injustice. I believe there may be people in this room who participated in the late 70s in a constitutional convention for this very state, of which it was to be the city and county of Honolulu, together with all counties in the state, shall map and identify their important agricultural land, because the people in the state of Hawaii felt an urgency in the 70s of such magnitude and crisis that everything here before you today to codify taking ag lands, the agenda today says it's ag lands. Doesn't take a ruling of the LUC. It says ag lands because you codify such. So if we take the state constitution and we take that the county shall map and identify its important ag lands, you cannot, in good faith, advance this measure until you have completed the exercise.
So I'm looking specifically on page 2, be it resolved. Mapping of important agricultural lands. Can you quantify if Hoopili D.R. Horton's petition with the Land Use Commission, if that land is indeed important ag land?
Not as I sit here today, because you know, we evaluate looking at the criteria in the state statute. There's a definition of what you can define as important ag lands, and that's the purpose of this. Hiring the consultant and going through this exercise of looking at those ag lands that meet those criteria.
Today we'll be discussing what's called the purple spot. Do you know if that acreage is also considered important ag land?
It's zone preservation at this time, so
Okay.
yeah.
Important preservation land?
It was intended for a golf course, so I'm not sure how important.
The reason, Chair, that I asked this question is there's a bill at the state legislature that was co-sponsored by 37 House members. I believe it's House Bill 2703. And it's trying to take the decade-plus effort of identifying important ag lands that are already inventoried, and then trying to substantiate the sustainability movement of that buzzword sustainability that they had 2050 and the Sustainability 2050 plan. And this bill 2703, Chair, as I bring it up because there has to be a benchmark and a starting point that identifies what are those important ag lands. In this measure 2703, it says by XYZ year you will be self-sustaining with your foodstuffs. In other words, if you import a percentage, you're going to decrease that amount and have more of a percentage locally grown. In order for the legislature to meet those confines, this resolution is a marriage to that bill. If both of them were to pass, this resolution 12-23, Chair, and House Bill 2703, there would have to be an understanding of Hoopili, 1,550 acres, and the so-called purple spot with tropical land, if those acreage is of party to the inventory or not. So to defer to previous work, I think that the effort of both the House bill and this resolution is to finally say, is the 1,550 acres important ag land or not? And so you're saying that at this time this resolution won't clarify
Well,
that?
we're going to go through the exercise of identifying important ag lands. And that's what the exercise of identifying important ag lands and mapping them will flesh out.
If I can, Chair, one more time. I thought in the 1970s they already did that. They classified, there's Class A, Class B, Class C ag lands. It was already done in the 70s.
There's a specific definition for important ag lands, and the state statute provides criteria for that.
Okay, and so you don't know what Hoopili, the 1,500 acres on the other plan, if that's A, B, or C. You don't know at this time.
As I sit here today, I don't know. Okay. There is a classification for it, but this is A, B, or C is not important ag land. That's a different type of category.
The reason, Chair, I bring it up is Councilmember Cachola, and then in response it was meant to sacrifice and to allow for the second city and the buildup on the Eva Plain so that other places could remain in ag. I just think that that has to be clear on this resolution. I don't find the resolution is clear to either allow for the current studies that had identified certain ag lands as to be important ag lands. Just because an urban growth boundary shifts doesn't mean the ag land isn't important anymore, as this definition does. So we have a conflict between an urban growth boundary and what's actual important ag lands and identified as important ag lands. So
the state constitution usurps your Oahu general plan. The urban growth boundary, as you know, this council passed a resolution 11-23, committee draft 1, in the year 2012. Prior to such, what I'm getting at, is Councilwoman Kobayashi introduced a measure to follow up on that mandate of the Constitution to hire an agricultural liaison to map and identify. You shall. And it took 3 decades for the state to figure out who's going to pay for this exercise. So when we finally found out the county's got the money and they hire somebody, and it was Laura Thieland, she said, and I quote, "I can do this within a year." And that was in 2011. Point. Had this property of D.R. Horton's Hoopili purchased, because they knew when they bought the land from the state of James Campbell, that the state constitution was in play. They knew at the time of the deed of contract of transfer to the Bureau of Land Conveyance that the state constitution will always trump them today. Because today, in good faith, if that ag liaison were to map and identify that property thereof, it would be classified as important agricultural lands and then inventoried for our governor to then put in his bank, where the governor says, in this bank over here, we're going to protect and preserve, and wanted to increase that inventory of land. So, Chair and members, if you connect the dots, this is not anti-development, anti-affordable housing, anti-anything. It's pro, pro, pro. Pro the people, follow through. Social justice is that if any attorney were to read the document of how we got to where we are today, you cannot advance this until you've mapped the land. And why? Because if it were mapped and identified, we'd get the results that Hart has provided, numbers that which are false.
There are federal issues going on here in this process that are very flawed. FDA has already said that they're going to have to revisit the rating of the farmland that was done by Parsons Brinkerhoff to help expedite this rail.
5 experts graded this property for Hart, and the federal government says if it has a threshold, you can't develop on the land because the federal government protects ag land that we eat off of. The federal government says it's so important. So important. So all of a sudden, Hart said this land is not valuable. And if you folks here actually mapped it, you could prove Hart gave falsified numbers, and the other 4 numbers were quantified would be legitimate. So in good faith, everybody here, you've been put on record. Don't do it. Vote no. Do the right thing. The people from 1978 from that con are expecting you to follow through. Don't breach that trust. Social justice, follow through. Mahalo.
Thank you.
When Mufi Hanneman was elected, he rewarded Campbell Estate for their support by putting Henry Ng in as the head of DPP. Henry's job was to get those houses zoned, and we got 53,000 houses zoned. 53,000 houses zoned. And we're going to put 12,000 more. And what?
Members, any
I've sent you
objections
this
or
stuff. I've
reservations?
sent you pictures. I've
on
sent you
Bill
all the
3?
material. Please look at it. You know, there are only 5 lanes. You can only get 1 more lane in. The freeway is backed up 4.5 miles. 4.5 miles is backed up now. 1 lane might take care of that. It won't take care of another 10,000, another 11,000. It won't take care of 53,000 more. And then they're going to put 12,000 more on it. That's 65,000 houses feeding
Noting no
1 lane of freeway.
objections or reservations, Committee Report 86 has been adopted and Bill 3 has passed second reading. Members, we stand in recess till 1:30.
If Ho'opili's to succeed, let's take heed to the Evan Neighborhood Board's 10 in favor, 1 abstention, that passed a motion back in the 2007 or 09 on Ho'opili project, that the east-west connector road be completed first, prior to any other development. That was the compromise. It took a long time to reach that compromise because the people of Evan Beach 96706 have many different facets and understanding of the project. However, they did come to an agreement, a consensus, on the east-west connector road. That it be in the unilateral agreement as it currently reads, until the last home is sold, that road will be completed. We've suffered the Fort Weaver Road from 2 to 4 to 6 lanes. And we, the people of Eva Beach, said, don't duplicate that, please. Build the infrastructure first. And so the east-west connector road became the priority. And I haven't heard it mentioned. I haven't heard the people who want Ho'opili to work with us, either side. Because we all are us. We're all in this together. And if Ho'opili is to come to fruition, let's make sure that we don't allow the east-west connector road to be built last as it currently is a condition. That is unacceptable. And you do have a solution to change it. Please consider such. And mahalo for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. There are others with more expertise. I'm opposed to this, but there are others with more expertise on the subject matter I'm going to bring up. And I bring it up for the following reason. At the Planning Commission meeting, of which I did testify on at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands at its headquarters, it was about the Pueo owl. Ironically, the UH West Oil campus, its mascot is the Pueo. I came here in 1997, and that owl's been talking to me ever since. Maybe that's why I'm a little hooty, huh? But I see it about every night. And I said to myself when I worked for Rep. Cabanilla, what do? It's the owl's last stand. It's the last place it goes. If we tell the developer, that nest won't be there tomorrow. If I tell you, council members, that nest won't be there tomorrow. If I tell you where it is, that nest won't be there tomorrow. The reason that the Pueo owl is still there right now in that grassland of that 1,500 acres is because nobody's going to tell you where it is.
And so today, it's culminated where I have to, because it's protected by state law. The DLNR hasn't tagged one pueo. It doesn't have 1 inch of territory on this island. Not 1 inch. We give the bat, the insects, Red Lima, $20 million for the Red Lima, 18 acres in the same area, habitat conservation plan, same area. The pueo has no voice. Nobody's listening. It's getting creamed by the cars. I watch it fly underneath that rail guideway in between the power lines. And, you know, there's things I want to say here, but on my camera, I tell you personally, because you'd probably lock me up. But if nobody's going to listen to the pueo, I know someone else is going to talk with much better grace than I and give you a better understanding that if this is our white rhino, this is our cheetah, this is everything that everyone's talking about the rest of the world. How can we save these beautiful beasts and creatures? And it's right in front of your face, right here. You don't need to save the elephant and the tusks and the ivory. It's right here. And if that bird doesn't get that grassland protected, it has nowhere else on the ever plain. I don't call the blast zone a habitat. I don't call the golf course a habitat. That's one patch, and it could be Ho'opili's Central Park. You could put the high rises and the TOD and look down on a habitat, and everybody from around the world will say, there's the pueo. You have an opportunity to save this creature and do it right, because if you don't, I don't know how you can put your head on the pillow at night. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for our former colleague?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And you think to yourself, do I want my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren looking back and saying, I took that land where that pueo flew, and I have seen the pueo at night. And I turned it into this concrete with a few little areas in there of green. You cannot eat concrete. Thank you.
You know, all these people talking about this place, Hoopili, I disagree with this place. We have terrible traffic already. You guys seen that 2 days ago. And this rail stuff ain't helping us. That's a big mess you guys got us into already. Now you want to climb us into another mess? This pueo use the grass there to make the babies and lay the eggs. Nobody knows about the owl. I do. Yeah? I studied it. Every March they're here. Right now, this month. Last month. Last year, I count 30 of them. This year, so far, only 2.
I want to talk to you, first of all, about what I heard said this morning about the affordable housing, that it is not going to be retroactive. I think, you know, it only makes sense that we defer this bill, keep it in committee until the administration gets their act together, and then work on it again. That would give us some time to convince you of good things, too. I'd like to, first of all, talk to you today about traffic. The traffic in the last few days has been what we're going to have with Ho'opili. Now, I've got to tell you, I'm not lying. I'm not lying. Do the math. You have 53,000 houses that you, the council, have zoned already. 53. That's not including Koa Ridge, which is another 5. That goes up to 58. Add the 12 of Ho'opili, and you've got 70,000. We only have 95,000 houses out there already. 95 to 70, that's almost equal, right? Okay, go look at the traffic and see what happened yesterday. We had, and the day before, we have 3 lanes open. 3 lanes out of 5, okay? What is that? That's like this percentage, huh? This is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. You know, this is what is going to happen every single day. The newspaper said it cost $1 million yesterday. You are going to vote for the people of this island to spend $1 million every single working day of their lives. Every single working day of their lives, another $1 million. That's what we're dealing with. Now, the Department of Planning and Permitting and DTS are not telling you the truth. They're not.
Thank you.
Call them in. Call them in. Insist that they prove to you, because they cannot. Why not? Because their figures are based on 33% of what you've got out there already. 33%. That's the houses they're considering. 33% of those that are already zoned are already vested. Okay.
Mr. Dudley, thank you so much. If you can
Honestly.
summarize, please.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, I would like to summarize. I want to say that the agriculture that they talk about up in the highlands, plants need different kinds of environment. There are things that grow in the highlands that can't grow in the lowlands, and there are basic things we survive on that can grow in the lowlands but can't grow in the highlands. This is our last lowlands farmland. When you give it away, it's gone. We already heard today in California, Jerry Brown is saying the place is drying up. This is our food basket. We're going to need food. Food from Ho'opili.
Thank
Don't
you very
give it
much.
up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It could be that concrete makes sense to those who import 90% of the food we consume in this island.
Thank you very much.
Of course we need the housing, just not there.
It's an insane situation. If you look on the freeway as you come in and you're driving in and it's just packed, the other side is packed too. It's going the other way. We've taken one of their lanes and we've crammed them so bad that they're backed up all the way to the freeway. People in traffic know this. They're taking an hour and a half. People on the Waianae Coast, 2 hours in the morning to get to work. And in the afternoon, it's the same damn thing. And it's 2 hours to get home. Now, what is this going to do? This council, not some of you young people, but you know, this council has zoned 53,000 more houses out there. When Muthi Hanneman was elected, he rewarded Campbell Estate for their support by putting Henry Ng in as the head of DPP. Henry's job was to get those houses zoned, and we got 53,000 houses zoned. 53,000 houses zoned. And we're going to put 12,000 more. And I've sent you this stuff. I've sent you pictures. I've sent you all the material. Please look at it. You know, there are only 5 lanes. You can only get 1 more lane in. The freeway is backed up 4.5 miles. 4.5 miles is backed up now. 1 lane might take care of that. It won't take care of another 10,000, another 11,000. It won't take care of 53,000 more. And then they're going to put 12,000 more on. That's 65,000 houses feeding 1 lane of freeway.
Well, we know how bad it is.
But if we're looking at tens of thousands of houses that are already on the books that will be built, and we're considering allowing Ho'opili to come in, you know, I don't know what else to say. It doesn't make sense to approve this project.
Also, I've been on the transportation since '92, and I can tell you this is madness, because we're not looking at just Ho'opili project. We're looking at the other projects that's along Farrington Highway, across from Ko'olino. I mean, you folks don't know we're going to get about 4,500 homes on one side, 1,600 on the other side, 900 more on the other side. Wow, with the 12,000. How does traffic work?
I don't have any real gripe with conscientious development. We're not seeing too much of that today, and that is a big concern all over the island. The concept of keeping the country, not messing around in that area, I think is a big fallacy. That's a big concern for me. And the reduction of traffic is very important to me. I wouldn't put my worst enemy, well, maybe my worst enemy, through the kind of traffic congestion that the people on the western side of the island go through on a daily basis. I avoid H1 as much as possible. I get it. I think all of us get it. But you must understand, even back in 2008, the environmental impact statement clearly stated that this rail project will not reduce traffic congestion. By 2030, traffic congestion will be worse with this rail than without it. Having said that, I'll move on to the land. Ho'opili has always been, and will always be if we have our way, the best prime farmland in the state. Some people say in the country.
It shows you the TIAR. It shows you where they're fudging the numbers. You know, look at it. Get the DPP in here. Get DTS. Force them to prove to you that those 65,000 people can get on that freeway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions for the testifier? No questions? Thank you,
Part
Dr.
of this Hoopili project of taking the world's best land, agricultural land, and turning it into development. When is this insanity going to end? You must look at all the options of how this will jeopardize us into the future. Development run amok.
Let's take heed to the Evan Neighborhood Board's 10 in favor, 1 abstention, that passed a motion back in the 2007 or 09 on Hoopili project that the east-west connector road be completed first prior to any other development. That was the compromise. It took a long time to reach that compromise because the people of Evan Beach 96706 have many different facets and understanding of the project. However, they did come to an agreement, a consensus, on the east-west connector road. That it be in the unilateral agreement as it currently reads. Until the last home is sold, that road will be completed. We've suffered, we've a road from 2 to 4 to 6 lanes. And we, the people of Evan Beach, said, don't duplicate that, please. Build the infrastructure first. And so the east-west connector road became the priority. And I haven't heard it mentioned. I haven't heard the people who want Hoopili to work with us, either side, because we all are us. We're all in this together. And if Hoopili is to come to fruition, let's make sure that we don't allow the east-west connector road to be built last, as it currently is a condition that is unacceptable. And you do have a solution to change it. Please consider such, and mahalo for your time. Thank you so much.
I mean, this freeway, just beyond the merge, cannot be widened. Cannot be widened. You look at the columns. You've got 6 columns on the right. Look over there on the left. You've got 6 columns on the left. There's 70 feet only between those columns. They cannot be moved. Now, that's the only place you're going to be able to get any lanes going that direction. Look over there. You see the truck. Looks like that area must be open, right? Move on to the next slide. No, this is sitting in the way. And then you see how the road comes together and it just comes into a guardrail. All right, there is no room anywhere for more lanes. There's no room anywhere for more lanes. Now, you go back again, you can take the 5 lanes here and this 10-foot shoulder, and you can narrow the lanes by 1 foot. But that's all you can do. Then you could get 6 lanes through. However, go back to slide 1. We now have 95,000 houses here already on this side of the merge. And this is the one I want to show. And we've got, you can't see the numbers very well. Go to the next one, please. The next one is from the Evan Development Plan, and it shows that we've got 34,805 houses already zoned. Now, besides that, down at the bottom, we've got 3,018 houses zoned on Waianae Coast, and we've got 15,500 in Central. We've got total 53,323 houses already zoned. Already zoned. They need to go through that merge. They need to go through that merge. Our people are already backed up 4.5 miles. We need to go through that merge. There's no room for anything but 1 more lane. That means 53,000 people are ahead of Hoopili. get the right to go through that lane. Okay? We can't get 53,000 people in one lane. All the rest of the lanes are already filled, and we got traffic back to 4.5 miles. The people who have written the TIAR are fooling you. It's not true. It's not true. You can't do it. You just can't.
For public testimony is Tom Berg. Aloha. I have here, I'm again recording myself because what I seem to say doesn't get registered by anyone. This is sent on November 26, 2014 by email to everyone here, and it's asking what's the status of the federal property and why hasn't the federal government in all these years given us the right of way? What's the problem? What is Dennis Dwyer doing in Washington, D.C.? Why is he being paid $25,000 a month to handle this? What's the status? Does he report to you? That's the kind of accountability that I think people like me who want to see this project succeed come to fruition. I want to move on very quickly. The right-of-way is very important to me because last month I told you the right-of-way figure was $90 million in expenditure dollars for the entire 20 mile of the guideway. When Mr. Gabrowskis gave a report, here is a real estate fund with its own contingency fund that was unbeknownst to me at the time when I was a council member. So I made many questions. Where did you come up with a 300 million-ish account when it was always 90 million? What happened? What triggered that differential? I still haven't gotten an answer, okay? Back to November 2nd, 2011, last month, the FFGA I'm claiming was misrepresented, mischaracterized. I don't care by who. But at no point in time, with a final design having even been submitted or agreed to by the federal government, it wasn't until December 11th of 2011. However, on November 2nd, 2011, when the hearing was so that the people could react and put a better rail system on without compromising anything, putting a different engine on the train. It's a change of scope, but just like the route, the FTA said it's okay because the price didn't change, level of service didn't change, the operation date didn't change. It was going to rather the only change be less money. And the FFGA on November 2nd, 2011 was represented. No one from HART came. I researched this, so I emailed you folks and I says, this is really odd. How can it be that HART didn't show up to one of the most important hearings that I can see of all time? And that is, what technology are you going to put on this track? And I've asked that question. Did I miss something? Where's their testimony? The reason there's no testimony is because they knew that the FTA said we can change the technology. So I'm going to wrap up because my time is off. I'm done. But please, look up Levix. I'll say it again. They could do from midnight to 4 a.m., generate revenue for you so that you can make this project work. You can feed from the harbors, goods, services, and freight. Doesn't make any noise. It'll go into Waikiki, UH Manoa, make no noise. And it's dual. You can take your 80 rail cars. They will work on a maglev system. It's doable. I have numerous maglev companies that have hit me up telling me, what can you do to just get an informational briefing, and they'll come talk to you, engineer to engineer, and help you find a better way than levying this tax. Don't do any tax. Get rid of Dennis Dwyer's $25,000 a case salary. Gosh, I got too much to say. I'm getting worked up. But you know what? I'm on your side. And all my emails are to make this thing so you're not embarrassed and you can really go to sleep at night. Put your head on the pillow and feel confident that you checked off every box for the taxpayer. But you haven't. And that's why I'm so upset. And I hope you ask me a question, because I don't want to come here ever again. Thank you very much. I really appreciate
your testimony. Any questions or comments of the testimony from the audience? Testimony? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Berg.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is...
Let's all not forget that I'll just wrap up because I have too much to say, and I'll just end with this because I know you want to get me out of here. It's this administrative fee. Is that in the first year of its collection, the department, taxation, used $600,000 to $700,000 to collect the fee, and that was at the high end. That was to go and hire the people, hire the computers, get everything set up. $600,000 to $700,000 year one. It went down from thereafter, and that's a fact. You can get it. I got it. When I'm at the council, I introduced a resolution because the precedence has been set that the city and county of Honolulu charged the state 2% to collect as you know, Senator, impact fees. Because the state administered impact fees and says, we don't do property tax, the city does. So the city didn't say to the state, I'm gonna rip you off. I'm gonna get 10% off you. The city said, let's do 2%. So, okay, I'll end with this. You have 2% in law already as a guidance. Take this measure, get rid of any other number. And if you're gonna use the 2%, I'd rather you just take the money that you use to collect the tax, collect those that are in arrears, and you'll find out it's less than $600,000 a year. Again, 21st century rail, you're not building it. Let us parlay. Let us have some activity on the Senator Sparrow. You're into space. Look up maglev, magnetic levitation. And one last thing as my neighbor. This technology of magnetic levitation has been suppressed. And I know you, and I've talked about it, and many others. And so let's move on. Mahalo so much for your time.
It's about planning. When the idea of sprawling the city into the farmlands of Honolulu was first thought up, you could still find doctors in this country who said that smoking was good for your lungs. That's how old that idea is. Ideas change. We now know that suburban sprawl is a nightmare. Lots of people suffer from that nightmare every day on this island. To say that we have to approve Ho'opili as it's currently construed because the project has been planned for decades is lazy thinking, it's poor planning, it's poor governance. Of course we need the housing, just not there. It should go on the 500 acres of barren fields that surround Kapolei Hale. The members of the zoning committee know what I'm talking about because they had a meeting there the other day. You step out of Kapolei Hale and you're surrounded by empty land. It's not farmland. You could and you should build there. Dense, high-rise housing, the sort of housing that D.R. Horton has done such a good job of designing, so that it would create a true downtown for the so-called second city and give Kapolei a fighting chance to compete with Honolulu as a rival urban center. This project is touted as transit-oriented development. Some of it is, but 2,280 of the proposed units are single-family, suburban-style homes that are sprawling over 380 acres of farmland, all of them more than half a mile walk from the train stations. So those homeowners will automatically get in their cars to commute. That is not transit-oriented development.
Chair and members, my name is Tom Berg, and I come from 96706. But we're all in this together, so it doesn't matter. Chair, I'd like to bring to your attention that I'm in opposition to this measure on the basis and grounds that it's a social injustice. I believe there may be people in this room who participated in the late 70s in a constitutional convention for this very state, of which it was to be the city and county of Honolulu, together with all counties in the state, shall map and identify their important agricultural land, because the people in the state of Hawaii felt an urgency in the 70s of such magnitude and crisis that everything here before you today to codify taking ag lands, the agenda today says it's ag lands. It doesn't take a ruling of the LUC. It says ag lands because you codify such. So if we take the state constitution and we take that the county shall map and identify and support ag lands, you cannot, in good faith, advance this measure until you have completed the exercise. The state constitution usurps your Oahu General Plan. The urban growth boundary, as you know, this council passed Resolution 11-23, Committee Draft 1, in the year 2012. Prior to such, what I'm getting at, is Councilwoman Kobayashi introduced a measure to follow up on that mandate of the Constitution to hire an agricultural liaison to map and identify. You shall. And it took 3 decades for the state to figure out who's going to pay for this exercise. So when we finally found out the county's got the money and they hire somebody, and it was Laura Thieland, she said, and I quote, "I can do this within a year." And that was in 2011. Point. Had this property of D.R. Horton's Ho'opili purchased, because they knew when they bought the land from the state of James Campbell, that the state constitution was in play. They knew at the time of the deed of contract of transfer to the Bureau of Land Conveyance that the state constitution will always trump them today. Because today, in good faith, if that egg liaison were to map and identify that property thereof, it would be classified as important agricultural lands and then inventory for our governor to then put in his bank, where the governor says, in this bank over here, we're going to protect and preserve, and wanted to increase that inventory of land. So, Chair and members, if you connect the dots, this is not anti-development, anti-affordable housing, anti-anything. It's pro, pro, pro. Pro the people, follow through. Social justice is that if any attorney were to read the document of how we got to where we are today, you cannot advance this until you've mapped the land. And why? Because if it were mapped and identified, we'd get the results that Hart has provided, numbers that which are false. 5 experts graded this property for Hart, and the federal government says if it has a threshold, you can't develop on the land because the federal government protects ag land that we eat off of. The federal government says it's so important. So important. So all of a sudden, Hart said this land is not valuable. And if you folks here actually mapped it, you could prove Hart gave falsified numbers, and the other 4 numbers were quantified to be legitimate. So, in good faith, everybody here, you can put on record, don't do it, vote no, do the right thing. The people from 1978 from that con are expecting you to follow through. Don't breach that trust. Social justice, follow through. Mahalo.
Thank you. Members, any questions for one of our former colleagues, former council member Tom Berg? No questions? Why are you running away, Tom? Jeez, take it easy.
The federal government.
I guess no questions.